Good evening. Would like to call this Concord Township Zoning Commission meeting to order. Tuesday, July 6th. We have a relatively light agenda this evening. So we'll just kind of dive right in here. Item number 1 under new business is a site plan review application number 043 by Creative Construction Group LLC for a proposed medical office building located on Auburn Road. Current permanent parcel number 08A02000000260. So we have a staff report on this that we were able to review. And we also have the application with some additional information, plans, some drawings. Heather, you want to give us a kind of a high-level view of what we're dealing with here from the staff report?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So the project tonight entails a new medical office building, just under 5,000 square feet on Auburn Road, across the street from the assisted living facility, south of Capitol Parkway, on the property zone Capital District. I thought the project was well presented to the township, very, very complete with a nice landscape plan. The civils were met most of the requirements. I do just have a couple recommendations as far as a conditional approval. We did get a little bit of feedback from our fire department, and also in regards to the proposed wall and that's required as part of the Capital District. It does state that the wall needs to be maximum height, should be 3 feet in height. They're proposing 4, so they could take that down to 3 feet. And putting the evergreens in between the columns, in my opinion, met the intent of what that screening wall was designed for. I know the applicant is here and we'd be happy to walk you through the project if you want to hear.
Okay. Is the applicant here this evening?
Yes.
Why don't you come on up and state your name and address for the record and give us a little presentation on your application.
Okey-doke. Good evening, Bill Brooks, Creative Construction. We are here to discuss, and thank you so much for seeing us today and allow us to present. We are presenting a proposal to build a new medical office building for Dr. Masseni on Auburn Road. With me today I have Rob Shearer with Myers Architects, Chuck Zooks with Polaris Engineering, Jody McHugh with McHugh Landscaping Design, and Dr. Masseni with who owns and operates Vein Clinics of Lake County. As Heather said, our building's just under 5,000 square feet proposed. 3,500 of the 3,500 square feet will be occupied by Dr. Masseni for her clinic, and then the rest, the back part of the building, will be used for tenant space, for future tenant space down the road. We are shooting. I don't know if you guys got the schedule. I'm guessing you did, but yeah. We're hoping for an August start with completions probably spring of 2022. The only thing we're waiting on really right now is your approval, and then we've submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers for a permit. There is wetlands on the site. So we're waiting for them to respond back on whether they're going to come out and visit the site. If they do choose to come out and visit, that could delay things. We are avoiding half of the site for the wetlands that's been discovered on the site, and we're impacting less than 0.1 acres of wetlands. So we feel very strongly that we have a good case for them to move forward with our plan. So I'm here to field any questions you may have. I have the group with me. Dr. Masseni would like to address the group, if you will allow, just to explain her practice. She currently is operating in Lake Health, on the 3rd floor of Lake Health. And she's very much looking forward to getting moving on this project. So if you'll permit me, I'd like to
Sure,
introduce
absolutely.
Dr. Masseni, let her come up and address
Sure.
the group, and then
Absolutely.
I'll field your questions.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Dr. Masseni?
With that, yes, thanks for the beginning of the COVID. Yes.
Time like that, so nice to meet you in person. Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm Dr. Masseni, as I was introduced. I have been a physician in Lake County for as long as I remember, actually, about 20 years maybe. Initially, I was a, sure. Initially, I worked as a primary care with Lake Hospital System. That was from 2007 to 2013. And then I became involved with the vein clinic, and I decided to change specialty, basically, going through additional training and such. So in 2013, I opened my own practice, and my very first office has been, and up until now, has been at TriPoint. So basically, we are approaching about 8 years of me into the practice of vein clinic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Basically, it's a vascular practice. I treat varicose veins, and we also have wound clinic, so I treat patients with chronic wounds. This has been a very successful practice, and I love to practice in Lake County. It's a great place to be at. Now, after 8 years, I have decided it is time to move on and have my own location, TriPoint. Quite honestly, it's too expensive. So I figured if I can have my own place, that would be nice. And this opportunity came about. We are planning to only make it better, both for the county, for the township, and for everyone around. We receive patients from far, far away, actually, from all surrounding counties, Geauga, Ashtabula, even further in PA, Pennsylvania, or West Side. So basically, that's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So she, really the objective here was to stay close to her current practice. Many of her patients are used to coming here, are familiar with where she's at, and the location just worked out perfect to where she acquired the land. We figured out the wetland issue, and now we're ready to move forward with construction. So that was really the driver of it, was to get out of the TriPoint location and have her own, but have it close enough. And you guys know it's very difficult to find land around here that's zoned correctly, that can utilize the space. So she was very fortunate to find the land and negotiate that. And, she was able to close on the land and then move forward with this. So we look forward to moving forward. I was involved in the building across the street too, and the development and construction of the Vista Springs building. So very familiar with Concord Township, the things that are needed, very familiar with Lake County. Very happy to work with Heather again, so we appreciate it.
We have, in our staff report, there are a number of conditions that they are making a recommendation to approve your application, as long as you're willing to meet a number of conditions that are in the staff report. Under section 4, staff recommendations, including conditions as appropriate. Item number 1, proposed wall consisting of columns and evergreens shown to screen the parking lot as required in section 22.10 H3 shall be modified to reduce the height of the columns to be 3 feet rather than 4 feet as proposed. Any issue with that?
No, Jody's here. She did the design on the, you're talking about the wall in front of the
Yes.
detention pond? Jody, do you have any comments that you want to make on that? If you...
No, sure, absolutely. If you could, ma'am, please state your name and address for the record.
Jody McHugh with McHugh Design Group, 38614 Andrews Ridge Way, Willoughby, Ohio.
Thank you.
So,
Do you want to use the easel?
sure, that'd be great. Thank you. Does this come off? Or do you not want us to?
You good for everybody?
Yep,
It does come off, I
You
believe.
can see it.
I'm good. Yes.
So just for reference, the wall we're talking about runs right here, and this is an elevation. To answer your question, that we don't have an objection to lowering the height. I would just ask that we could also lower the height of the evergreens that goes between it, so we don't have plants that are taller than the columns, if that's a problem. So it'd be more of a straight 3 foot across. I would change the species of those evergreens to be consistent with that column height.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask why that provision is in, what's wrong with 4 feet? Why is it 3? Is it the curb appeal, want to see the building? Or,
You know, I'm not really sure the thought behind the 3.
because I presume by design, you have 4 feet by,
I would say that Dr. Moseni actually would appreciate the lower height because she would like to show her building more. So
Oh,
that would
okay.
be, from her perspective, would be acceptable as well.
Okay.
So.
I'll withdraw that.
Okay. Since you're there, is there anything else you'd like to discuss with regards to the landscaping?
We just kept the view shed open to the building from the front, so the plantings are kind of splitting the difference, so you can look through the basin and you'll see that wall beyond, and it shows the building between there. We have the foundation plantings, and it's kind of wraps the building with providing seasonal color and interest, and hardy, durable material.
Well, as we have continued to develop and change and modify our zoning requirements and definitions and things of that nature, we've put a lot more focus over the last couple of years on landscaping and design. So we appreciate your efforts and appreciate you putting together a good solid plan for us. That definitely is something that bodes well for the community, and I think it makes for a very good curb appeal from a facility and site plan standpoint. So we appreciate your work.
Thanks.
So, any questions from the board while she's here? Mike?
Not from my case, no.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is that okay for leaving?
Yeah. Sure. Item number 2 on the staff conditional approval list is the columns proposed for the parking lot screening wall shall be faced with stone to match the building. We okay with that?
I think we're absolutely fine with that, yes. Yep.
Adjust the island for the sign to increase pavement with the entrance site to address the fire department comments. Fire department did make some comments. Proposed island for the sign has a size of 10 feet. Recommend that it be reduced to 8 feet to allow easier access for fire apparatus. Alternatively, widen the pavement width of 12 feet to 13 feet on each side of the island. Also recommended that the proposed 5-foot concrete wall be extended around the back side of the building to connect both sides.
And I'll let Chuck talk about the entrance. Chuck, you want to come up and, Chuck with Polaris? Chuck Zooks with Polaris Engineering. I'm guessing that's Ron who's concerned about the walkway around the back of the building? Is that right, Heather?
Mr. Brooks, yes, that was Ron Terriac, the deputy fire chief.
Right.
that made it.
So the reason we left the and for sure we want that walkway eventually, but the reason we left the walkway out now is because that back part is tenant space, future tenant space. It won't be occupied. So that part of the building, there's nobody going to be in it. So we didn't feel the need to connect the back of the building with the sidewalk. Nobody's going to be walking around there anyways.
Is that something you plan on doing once tenants become a part of the?
Yeah, I can speak for that. You said, yeah, absolutely. Once we get a tenant or two, depending, we will finish that sidewalk for sure.
Okay. So it's your intention to do that,
It is our
just
intention.
not at this point.
Yeah, there is a budget concern on this project, just with all the materials and everything being so high right now. So we're trying to be as conservative as we can, but fall within your code. So I'm hoping there can be some consideration to let us do that when the tenant goes in.
Okay.
And then Chuck can address the driveway.
You can state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Chuck Zooks, 34600 Chardon Road, Willoughby Hills, Ohio. Yeah, we have no issue with the 13 feet and the 8. There's so many design standards out there and they're not all aligned, so if 13 is requested, we have no issue.
Okay, super.
I think the big reason we went to 12, it's 12, right, Chuck? We're up against a wetland. As you're facing the site to the right, there's a pretty significant wetland there that we can't touch. We're going to avoid it. It's not part of our building footprint. It's not part of our parking footprint. The application that we submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers has us taking a little piece of that, which got us to the 12. So we'll have to adjust that. If you need us to go to 13, we'll have to adjust that somehow.
Well, the request from the fire department is to go to 13. And it seems to me that they're doing that from an access standpoint. So I think, I always take, any recommendations from the fire department is, pretty serious. They typically don't hang requests out there very often, and, usually it's always it's always based on the safety and the well-being of the residents and the people that are in the building or whatever, so.
Well, I put an antenna on the Vista Springs building because Ron wanted it, so
Right.
Trust me. Right, Heather? That was a big ticket item, but we 100% support fire
Right.
and the safety of this building, so.
Sure, okay.
If he feels it's 13, then we're gonna have to figure it out.
Yeah, I doubt that he spun the wheel and came up with 13 as a random number. He probably has some thought to it. And,
Well, that's a significant ditch in the front too, so I'm sure
Right.
he's concerned about the turn radius there.
right, yeah, he wants to say, I think it's all from a safety and access
Yeah.
standpoint.
Well, sure,
Okay.
we'll probably do, Chuck just had a good idea, we'll probably shrink the island a little bit.
Sure.
Dr. Massetti wants her sign, kind of
Right.
like we did for Vista Springs.
Right.
We want the sign in the middle of the island.
Right.
So maybe we'll just shrink the island a little bit. We're going to 8 feet anyways, right?
That's
On the
three.
height?
Yes,
So we'll probably just shrink the island a little bit. It'll take away a little bit of our landscaping around that sign, which you guys like to see, but we'll have to skinny up the island just a little bit.
yeah, I guess you had a size of 10 feet, he asked for it to be reduced to 8 feet.
It's not
on
gonna
the sign.
affect the width,
Right.
but we'll try to shrink
Right.
it down.
On the island size.
Just, yep.
Yeah, so I think that, so that, and if, like you said, the island is more expendable than going encroaching further into the wetlands, so,
Yeah.
the island could be reduced by a couple feet. If that's gonna help you get to where you need to be, then I think that's a good idea to try to accomplish that.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yep.
Yep.
Then the next item is to, when we talked about the sidewalk around the back side of the building, you said that your plans are to complete that sidewalk once you have tenants for that space. So that's, I don't have any issues with that. I don't know if there's anybody else on the zoning commission that has an issue with that.
I would imagine since it's in the minutes, that's a legal document. If not, I'd like to see it in writing,
Right.
that you agree to do that.
We'll put the sidewalk in when the tenant goes in? Absolutely, no problem.
Yeah. Rich?
You need that from,
Yes.
Dr. Masseni or me?
Who's ever responsible for the, building it? I imagine it'd be you guys.
But that'll happen after we're long gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, somebody has to sign it that's
Okay.
going to have to be responsible for it.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Rich, you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. In my experience, irrespective of the occupancy of the rear of the building, the circulation the fire department is asking for fire apparatus is a public safety issue. So just to connect around the building, you never know. So that's typically they want to be able to envelop the entire building structure upon completion. So I kind of put that in the fire chief. I think that has more merit than you may think, just because it's not occupied.
Right.
Well, we could also look at some kind of a temporary instead of concrete. You know, the sidewalk's gonna be concrete, so maybe we could look at some kind of temporary, just so it's safe to walk around there.
Yep.
If that's acceptable, we can do that for sure.
Heather, would that be an appropriate conversation to have with the chief?
I would probably recommend, tonight, if you're gonna vote to conditionally approve it with, that maybe that comment be modified, that they confirm with the deputy fire chief if there's an
Right.
alternative. I don't know what you mean by a temporary block.
Put stone, gravel, something that would, you could walk around, but cheaper than concrete.
Right.
I mean, I'm under a serious, we're under a budget,
Right.
significant budget concern on this building, significant. So
Understood.
wherever I can save money, I'm trying to do that.
Yep.
We talked about the walkway, but even though it's not going to be occupied, you still will allow for fire engines to go around it, right? Around the building if they had to.
Well, we're just talking about a sidewalk, right?
Right, I'm bringing up another point that I'm concerned about. If the fire apparatus has to get behind the building, even though it's not occupied, they'll be able to do that with fire equipment, right?
Oh, yeah, with fire equipment?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think the distance, I'm sure Ron looked at the distance on the building from the two drives.
Right.
I'm sure it's plenty. This is only a less than 5,000 square foot building, so I'm sure they can get to the building without any issues.
Right.
And just, I guess, keep in mind too that it was a request from the deputy fire chief. So, right, by not having that paved or improved walkway there, in the event, they just couldn't walk, maybe in a snow event, they wouldn't be able to walk behind the building, but they still have full access to the three sides.
Right. Okay. So we'll make an appropriate amendment on that. Plans must conform to the Lake County Stormwater Management Department stipulations as outlined above. The Lake County Stormwater Management Department did make some recommendations. They said to provide a minimum 18-inch vertical clearance on all storm sewer and utility crossover locations, to coordinate all proposed right-of-way work with the Lake County Engineers Office, to implement gravel verges from the curb cuts in the parking lot to the stormwater basin to minimize erosion along the pond embankments, add a proposed finish grades at the corners of the proposed building, spec rock outlet protection at the storm sewer inlet discharging into the basin, to recommend an aquatic safety bench in the stormwater basin, to define a swale at the base of the landscaping mound on the northern property line to take water west towards the ditch to minimize any water being pushed onto the 7913 Auburn property, to remove line 22 of the construction sequence. Did you see these?
I did.
Okay, you're aware of all these? Okay. The elevations shown on the temporary sediment basin calculation detail do not match the field grades. Please also include correct drainage area for the dewatering storage volume calcs, as well as verify the skimmer size calculated matches the size shown in the temp sediment basin outlet detail. For stormwater management report, they would like an update of the 24-hour rainfall intensity values in the report to the following: 1 year 2.05 inches, 2 years 2.46 inches, 5 years 3.06 inches, 10 years 3.54 inches, 25 years at 4.24 inches, 50 years at 4.81 inches, and 100 years at 5.42 inches. Please provide a post-construction time of concentration / time flow path calculation sheet, and confirm with the LCE if the driveway culvert calcs will need to be provided. So those were their stipulations. Anything that you have any issue with or have any problems conforming to?
I'll defer that to Polaris.
Okay,
Yeah, most of the stuff our engineers will work through after we leave tonight. Our goal is to submit later this week to all agencies.
okay, so there's nothing in this
No
list
issues.
that you have any issues with or have any problems with?
Nope.
Okay, fine, very good, thank you. Okay, and so that covers the staff recommendations from the following conditions there, and then we also have a staff recommendation on conditional approval for the following conditions. Number 1, color renderings of the proposed building shall be submitted. Building colors must be low reflecting, muted, and earth toned. Roof colors must be muted and compatible with dominant building color. And number 2, the trash enclosure details shall be updated to show compliance with the following: 3 solid walls, 1 gated wall of such nature and height, 2 feet height exceeding enclosed containers, as to conceal completely all operations thereof from the grade level. So is there any issues with that, those 2 conditions?
No, I think we have the color renderings
Right.
submitted.
Right.
Rob Shearer with Myers Architect is here. Are we gonna move to the design piece of this?
It's up to you.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay, all right, great.
Yep.
Rob? Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Shear, 5365 West Loveland Road, Madison, Ohio.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm with Joe Myers Architects, and just going to run you real quick through the building, and then here to answer any other questions you have. The one thing that I'll say about the comments that were provided, low reflecting is a kind of maybe semi-clear term. But the one thing I will say about that is, in order to sort of call attention to the entrance areas, we do have a copper roof on here. I've got a sample of that if you'd like to see it. It's not like a mirror kind of thing, but it's not. Some people might not consider it low reflecting, we kind of do, but other than that, definitely earth tones, definitely muted colors, asphalt shingles. The overall character of the building fits with the surroundings. It's not going to be confused with somebody's home, but it does give nods to residential forms and shapes and scales and that kind of thing. So I think it fits in well. This is the roofing that we're proposing. It's a copper color. It's not actual copper, so it doesn't fade out over time. Right? It's going to retain the copper color and that finish.
Right. Yeah, metal roofs are becoming more and more predominant and accent sections. I mean, I've seen that in a lot of. I mean, I think Auburn Career Center. A lot of the new additions they put on, they included a metal roof. A lot of those on that structure. So, yeah, I think when they're talking about the low reflecting, I think they're talking more about the walls and the more so than the roof itself. I don't think the roof is a big concern. I don't think that's something that's going to cause an issue.
Great.
So I think we're okay there.
Perfect.
So, and then the only other thing is the trash enclosure. That's the only other issue that they brought up. So we're good with that.
Yep. You guys have a copy of those drawings? Yep. Okay, great.
Yep.
So yeah, we don't have any issue with the comments that were made there.
Yeah, as long as we are, as long as we're in compliance with our, the trash receptacles and that stuff is always a big issue.
Right.
I just want to make sure they're
Depends on the
properly,
company, sure.
hidden and, not creating an eyesore or whatever. So that's pretty much what the gist behind that is. Okay. Anything else you'd like to talk about, or
I'll keep it short and sweet.
any, just like your grandma, right?
Exactly.
Anybody else, any questions from the board on
Mr.
this?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
The back half of the building is vacant for right now.
Correct.
I see on the front half of the building, which is the doctor's office, I see 4 handicap spots. I don't see any handicap spots for the back half, for the back quarter, really. And if that's going to be a vacant area to be occupied sometime in the future, I think we ought to put some handicap spots for that vacant area, for that proposed, because they're going to have they have their own entrance. They should have their own handicap spots.
So what are you thinking, Hiram, are you thinking like on the side of the building?
Yeah,
The two sides here?
yeah,
on,
the 2 sides,
Yep.
towards the back, towards the back.
Towards the back by the entrance?
Yeah, 38 shown, 24 required. Yeah, required.
So as the site plan sits right now, we're 2 handicap spaces over the requirement. If it's a question of location, of course, for the doctor's office, we'd like to have as many handicap spaces in that
I fully
area as
understand that.
possible. Yeah,
But you don't know what's going to go in the back quarter,
that's true.
and
So we are over on overall spaces as well,
Right.
and once that tenant space gets figured out, we can probably reconfigure that. No problem. Because we could lose 1 or 2 back there
I
and still
would
be
think,
well
I
within.
would think you could, yeah, okay.
I think we have 38 shown, we're required to have 25. So we've got plenty of room.
Yeah, we can knock one of those out, make a striping. and-
I figured you
There you
could. That's my only comment,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
It's a good comment, though. I think it's a good catch. Any other questions from the board?
Just one, looks like the building is designed for 2 doctors at some point, correct? That's the plan? 2 would be the most?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay,
So for the record, possibly 3.
okay. Thank you.
Rich?
No comment, Mr. Chairman. Good looking building.
All right. Frank, any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so I've given you kind of an outline of the staff report and the conditions that they've set forth for an approval. And for the record, you're basically saying that these are all very clear, nothing left for you to not understand as far as what you're required. You're okay with that?
We fully understand, yes, sir, thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the board at this point?
Only thing I could say, Andy, is years ago when we rezoned the area around Tri-Point and that medical corridor, this is exactly what we had in mind for the future, so I see this as an excellent addition to the community. Good-looking building, complies with everything. I think it's exactly what we were hoping to draw in there, so I'm pleased with this.
Yeah, and I saw the value keeping a fantastic practice like Dr. Masseni has. in Concord with her patients, the people working there, and the doctors that affiliate with her and work with her. So I think it's a win-win for the community and for Dr. Masseni and everybody. So we're very pleased to bring it to you.
Couple comments, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
Just a couple. From the photometric plan, and seeing the position here, it looks you're honoring the home to the north. So I assume the way the luminaires are downcast. So I appreciate that plan that's in the document.
I've had many meetings
Yeah.
with the residents in the area. So yeah, we're doing everything we possibly can to accommodate them. I think actually this last rain event that we had really exposed some issues along Auburn Road with the ditches. So I think our detention pond will definitely help that situation significantly. And the addition of the swale along the property line will keep the water off from going onto her property, which was another objective that we had in the design and layout of the building. So I think this should be received very positively by everybody.
No, agreed. It's well engineered.
Yep. And we just, I was kind of shocked. I don't know if you saw how big that pond was. That's a significant detention pond for a 5,000 square foot building.
Actually, it's based on my experience. It's what is expected. However, my question is, I assume you have clearing permit already. I visited the site,
We did?
and it appears that some of the debris is in the wetland B.
Yeah, so I got approval from Lake County Soil and Water. Matter of fact, their requirements have changed a bit. If you're gonna do a mechanized clearing, which was what we did, you need a temporary detention pond.
Yes.
You need a silt fence
Yes.
installed, just for clearing, just for
I'm
cutting down
aware,
trees.
yes.
Yeah, so, we had to do the silt fence, we had to fence off the wetlands per their request, and we had to dig a temporary detention pond, for the water, and a swale to the detention pond, so that was all accomplished,
Yes.
and we got full approval from Lake County to do that, so.
Understood. I was just noting
The-
that some of the debris is
the
in
tree-
the wetlands.
The trees
Yes.
that are in the wetland?
Yes.
So, these clearing guys can get a little bit aggressive.
Oh, I know.
at times.
It's just a comment, sir.
I did
It's
not
an
want them,
observation.
I did not want them going into wetland B. I had a hard enough time keeping them out of wetland A. So, you know, they gotta pick the trees out of there if they go in there. They can't take anything in there. They can't take any mechanized equipment into the wetland. It cannot be disturbed until the Army Corps comes out and certifies. So I just said, cut them, I just told them, please just cut them down and let the Army Corps come out, and then I think we'll have to go in there and hand cut all those trees and take them out, because we are not permitted to go in there. So I was overly cautious on that one, because I've had experience in the past. So
Very good.
You
Thanks,
gotta be-
Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
you gotta be really careful with what you're doing, especially with the soil and water. And Lake County they're on it. I mean, they're very good at what they do. So we were very careful to do it right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not here.
Only one thing I bring up, that I've lived down here since 1972. And ever since then, we've had 2 100-year rains that flooded our development down at the end where the creek is. Several times where the people's basements were flooded and they had to replace everything in their basement. Just to let you know, global warming is starting to hit. If you plan, I think, for a 100-year rain more frequently, you'll be much better off for everybody. That's just my comment.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, the size of that pond that we're putting in, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, but Chuck knows what he's doing, that's for sure. So we've got that site detained for all the water, for sure.
That's good. Thank you.
It will definitely help the neighbors.
Good. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions from the commission at this point, I think we're good to go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We kind of tackled both item number 1 and number 2. We did the site plan review, and then we also kind of segued right into the design review application for the 2 items. I guess what we'll do is we will tackle them as individual items on the agenda. So with regards to item number 1, which is the site plan review application, I would entertain a motion unless there's any further discussion by any zoning commission members at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we conditionally approve the site plan review application number 043 for the medical office building based on the discussion of tonight's meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. And I just want to make sure. So on the site plan review, there were there were 5 items, and they basically agreed to all 5 items that they said they would have those taken care of. So we're going to, the motion is to approve the site plan review application with the conditions that were on the staff report.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed? Let the record reflect we had 5 ayes, no nays, no abstentions, so that motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 2 on the agenda, which would be the design review application. I would also entertain a motion.
My turn. Mr. Chairman,
Sure, if you want to.
I'll make a motion to approve the design review application number 043 by Creative Construction Group as detailed and discussed this evening.
And do we want to make a stipulation for the conditional, for the conditions, the 2 conditions? Please.
I will amend that motion to include the 2 conditions as stated by the staff review comments.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Any abstentions? No? Okay, let the record reflect we have 5 ayes, no nays, no abstentions. Motion carries. So your design is approved and your project is approved to move forward based on the conditions that were laid out in the staff report. Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk to us. Looking forward to seeing the work get done. We always like to see nice additions to the community. So, thank you very much.
Good luck. Good to see you, Chuck.
Yeah, good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item number 3 on the agenda is a work session for possible zoning text amendments related to the residential conservation zoning district and outside dining. Thank you. Good luck.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you so much. You are terrific. Thank you. Thanks for your help.
Okay, we have some work done here on the work session. Heather gave us a handout here with some information on it. Heather, you want to kind of review everything, where we're at so far?
Yeah, let me update you because, let's see, in June, we were going to do a work session and then we had that pretty lengthy public hearing. So we opted not to continue that discussion at 11 o'clock at night, which is a good idea. But that also gave me a little bit of time Since then, I had a conversation with Dan Donaldson at Lake County Soil and Water. If you remember, we were trying to reach out to him initially to get some feedback on this potential restoration plan, environmental restoration plan for any projects that might include land that was previously disturbed. And I also spoke with Dave Rodacci at the Lake County Planning Commission. He's the planning director. And in your packet, or what I emailed you a few days ago and what I printed out in front of you is another updated version of the text. I did put today's meeting date on the top right-hand corner for reference because I know we're getting a lot of different versions of this. So maybe it would behoove to just to go through a couple things that were tweaked based on some recommendations from them, from both Dan and Dave. I guess I would start on page 1615.
I'm sorry, which page is that?
16.15.
1615. Okay.
As previously in all the other versions, everything's kind of redlined, you know. So
Right.
under the purpose statement here, we're proposing to change part of the purpose of the RCD to include, this is the second sentence, such flexibility intended to maximize the protection and conservation of the natural resource areas and their functions, rather than where it said before it was just to maximize conservation in the open space. This was a recommendation from Soil and Water to focus more on why we're protecting these areas, not just open space, but what's in that open space, and you know, why does the township care, and what is really the purpose and intent? You know, what do we, you know, and then this is the natural resource areas that are within that open space and their functions. So the wetlands and the wetland setbacks, because that does provide, you know, a function to those wetlands. So those are just a very minor change there. Kind of just moving through on page 1617.
But 1616, you have,
Well, that was a change of, okay, actually, yes, thank you, Hiram. This was slightly modified. We had originally put in, I'm sorry, under minimum project area in section 16.22A, we had initially made a clarification saying any existing right-of-ways could not be counted towards the minimum acreage requirement of the 20 acres. Dan at Soil and Water suggested that we add in unless extinguished at the time of the development. So there could be parcels of land that have old right-of-ways that are part of the property, but they get rid of them when they plat the new subdivision. So I think that would cover that. That's what the purpose of that was. For example, like the Eagle Point, actually, that had an old right-of-way on there, like an old 40-foot right-of-way. But when that developer is going to plat that new development, that will be extinguished, so it will no longer exist.
And so their recommendation is we exclude that.
We would allow that to count as long as they extinguish it at the time of development, so when they plat it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it does to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody okay with
It's
that?
very legal, yeah, I mean, I think we kind of just overlooked it, even at Eagle Point, because we didn't, you know, it was shown on the plans that it existed, but they weren't going to open up that old right of way and use that as a, you know, a public street or frontage to create the lots.
Right.
So that,
Okay. All right, go ahead.
okay, sure, yeah, on the next page, under decks, we referenced that all the decks have to meet all the minimum setbacks from the property lines. They were suggesting that we add in that it also still has to comply with the riparian setbacks as well. We don't necessarily have to add that in there because we do cover riparian setbacks in section 17, so.
So we're just being redundant.
A little bit there.
Sorry. No big deal.
You okay with it? Very good. On the next page,
Hey, Heather, before we go,
Yeah.
could I ask a question?
Sure.
On open space,
right,
I had a discussion with my next door neighbor yesterday, and he happened to mention that some of the neighbors felt that once all the homes in our development are completed and the homeowners association is turned over to the homeowners, there was thought of building a community swimming pool in the open space. And I told him I didn't think that was allowed. If it's, you can't develop it, but could you build a pool in an open space if the homeowners association wanted it?
No,
Yeah, I didn't think so.
no, yeah, the open space is,
Remains open.
right, it's supposed to be left in its natural state.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't allow any construction.
Okay, I guess they were talking and sort of threw that out, you know.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
He just happened to mention it, so I said, I
So,
don't think
like,
you can
with-
do that.
Right, so with that Villas at Canterwood, the latest one that came in front of this board, they were proposing a clubhouse, but they were basically using a sublot to do it.
Right, right.
Yeah, it was not gonna be in the open space.
Yeah, none of that encroached in the open space.
Right, it was on its own lot.
So in our case, Dawson would have to donate a
Basically
lot.
give up a lot,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
or he would have had to then way over the minimum requirement and then parcel out, a lot for it.
Right.
At the time of, developing.
Okay.
So on the next page, on 1618, under the open space design criteria, section CA, here we're proposing just to add in what some of those significant natural resources actually are that we want to conserve in the open space, such as streams, wetlands, forest tracts, wildlife corridors, and areas that may be adjacent to other open space areas when possible, or other protected areas. In addition to the historical and cultural elements. I think that just makes it more clear for anybody that might be utilizing this option to understand what we want to see in the open space, rather than just stating natural features.
What's the wildlife corridor? What exactly does that mean?
Deer crossing.
It's a deer trail, yeah. Or a
Like
moose
forest.
trail, or a bear trail.
Yeah.
I don't know that we'd be able to identify that. Unless you're like,
How
I
about
can
a
get a clearer answer on that. I didn't question that.
How about a horse trail?
Yeah, could be.
That's not a wildlife, but on the back of my property, I have I don't know what it is. It's not an easement, but I have an area that's supposedly a horse trail that has, it's on my plans, but it's never been used as a horse trail, but it's there. But a deer trail is something that I would only think that would include. But who's gonna pick that out?
Well, that's why I was asking, because I know, I'm an outdoorsman and I understand what a wildlife corridor is, but how are you going to determine that? I mean, deer use a lot
I
of,
don't know. I don't know.
I mean, seriously, they use a lot of, there's a lot of places where they cut through fields and woods and everything else. I mean,
Well, there's a place, the Canadian geese, when they make when they used to, now they just stay. They don't go down south anymore because our winters are much warmer than they used to be. But right on Bush Road, there's a little pond that you can, at certain times, you can see hundreds of them in there just taking, that's where they end up showing up. I guess I would consider that a corridor, right? They all stop there while they're migrating and stuff. So, another example. And of course, we had our black bear that showed up in Lake County last week.
well, the reason I question that, because that could get a little sticky. Okay, that could get a little sticky when you start, wildlife corridors. I mean, when you're talking about, I think when we talk about streams, wetlands, forest tracts, and areas adjacent to other open space, I mean, that's pretty clearly defined.
There's actually an online definition for a wildlife corridor, though.
Right.
So, connecting corridor to two groups of populations of animals where they can migrate. So,
What's a forest track?
What's a forest track?
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory, no? Track of woods, I mean, you know,
oh, we're talking a whole woodland, okay, all right. Okay, a track of trees.
right.
Okay, I got you. Now I understand.
Did I
Okay.
spell that wrong then?
That's a
Maybe
tract.
TRACTS
That'd be a T.
then?
Instead of a K.
I was gonna say,
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It would be
T-R-A-C-T.
Yeah, a
All right,
tract.
I'll fix that,
right.
okay?
That would make it more,
Yes, it does.
I think I would understand it then.
Okay, my fault.
So we're gonna change that to TRACTS and not CKS.
These are just recommendations from them. If there's anything you
Right.
guys are just like, no way, you know, we can take out anything. We can go back and get more information if you want.
Well, they're in the profession to do, they know what this stuff is. I mean,
Yeah.
this is their careers.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, these are terms that are used within the industry, if you want to call it that. You know, so as far as their verbiage is concerned, I have no problem with that.
The only thing I want to be careful of is making sure that we don't create a situation where somebody could use a terminology or a term or a definition as a cudgel to beat up a developer saying, oh, there's a wildlife corridor. It's like, really? I mean, how do you prove that? It could cause delays, could cause all kind of issues. Yeah, that's my concern. Just making I don't want to go too astray in the word games, you know, that could leave something open that somebody could use as a potential wedge issue to stop a development from going in or creating a problem. That's, you know, I mean, streams, wetlands, forest tracks, that all makes perfectly good sense to me. When we start venturing
Yeah.
off too far off that stuff, then I start getting concerned.
It appears though the wildlife corridor is man-made. It's actually created to allow animals to migrate, according to Wikipedia. So in that case, if we did have one of those, you'd want to, you know, protect that. But it's not just a track through the woods that a few deer made. There's a difference. It's actually a man-made item, a wildlife corridor. So
I don't think we have, right now, at
we have
least
it?
not to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we have like antelope or caribou or elk
bison,
that are migrating across Ohio and using specific parts of Concord Township
here we don't.
to go from point A to point B. So I would like to see that, I would personally, from my standpoint, I would like to see that removed. I don't like that included in it. But I mean, it's certainly open for discussion. I mean, it's a work session.
I've seen geese cross the road wherever they want to.
Right.
Right? Yeah, that's fine with me, removing a wildlife corridor. That's
Right.
fine with me.
Keep in mind too, the way it's phrased is that when possible, all of you, you know. But I think it would be difficult to prove if there was a wildlife corridor, but if you had a developer coming to you saying, I have this great project, and by the way, we're gonna protect this wildlife corridor, you know, maybe that might win you guys over on a project, or, you know, finding out more about what that is.
There could be an overpass, and well, I don't think we have any, but an overpass to allow deer to get across the highway sometimes. I mean, that wouldn't be unusual. I don't have a problem leaving it in there, as long as it's recognized as a wildlife corridor. It's an actually designated one, not one that somebody said there's tracks in the woods, but a man-made corridor to allow deer to get across the highway somewhere.
Rich, I'm not sure if the intent is a man-made, yeah.
No, it's
I think
not?
these are more natural, yeah.
Okay, because the definition's
Yeah.
really, it's a conservation thing. So if it's a natural corridor, no, I agree with Andy.
Yeah, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Well, the key word you mentioned, if possible.
Yeah.
That's open for interpretation. And I'm sure if it ever comes to us, neighbors and people, when we have our public hearings, might bring something up. And they'll start showing, everyone nowadays has their iPhone where they're taking pictures of things happening. You know, there might be something that will be open for discussion. So, me personally, I have no qualms with it. And we'll address it when the time comes.
Well, I think, you know, to your point, Frank, it doesn't say if possible, it says when possible.
Okay.
There's a difference between if and when. I mean, there's a definite phraseology there that, you know, so to me, if possible is pretty open. When possible is pretty specific. If it's there, then you have to go with it. So at least that's how I interpret that. So I would think, you know, again, it's a work session. My preference would be to have it eliminated, but I'm one voice. I'm fine.
Mr. Chairman, I have to agree with the points. I think as you're reading it and listening to the discussion here, it just goes outside the envelope of what we're talking about here. I would agree with you to strike that.
Hiram, any comments?
I'm okay with removing it.
Okay. All right.
Who put that comment in there?
This language was recommended by
Right.
the district administrator for Lake County Soil and Water.
Right.
Dan.
And I appreciate their efforts. I mean, I really do. I think they do, you know, like, I think it's a very worthwhile, you know, overall work that they put into this. You know, I think it's, you know, it's not to devalue anything they're recommending. We don't want to get carried away. So, anyway. All right, I'm sorry, Heather.
That's okay. Well,
Onward
let me know
and
at this time, do we want to leave it in for now, see how it shakes out, or, I mean, we're probably gonna be here again next month, so. we can-
Right.
Or we
The
can
work
just take it
session
out.
will continue.
Okay.
We'll revisit that.
Okay.
Circle back,
All right, I
so
shall.
to speak.
Okay. Okay, so under the next subsection B, we talked about, the existing language talks about how designated open space, if there's any existing trails, you can maintain those. But this new language would allow additional passive recreational opportunities if they were previously approved by the township within those protected areas that would encourage the connection of existing trails. So, or that would, and this came from Soil and Water again, that might provide some kind of scientific research benefit, or would allow for access to go in and do some restoration activities on a stream or on a wetland. So this would allow those other items to happen within the open space. And I know that with the existing language we have now, there's a definition of open space that does allow for some creation of trails in the open space. So, and I think through this amendment, we want to clean that up a little bit and make that more clear in this section as well. We might have to go back and revisit that existing definition in section 5. I apologize, I don't have that for you tonight. It might conflict with the new one that our legal counsel had proposed to us, so I'm going to make a note of that.
You know what, Heather,
Yeah.
I want to go back
Sure.
just momentarily to page 1617 under 16.24 permitted density and open space requirements.
Yeah.
Section A. Open space is defined as a portion of a development site that is permanently set aside for public or private use and will not be developed. When it says public or private use, and in the same sense it says will not be developed. I guess I'm a little bit concerned about the public and private use. because then that kind of goes to what Rich just brought up about,
Putting a pool in.
you know, wanting to put a pool in. I mean, technically that's public use or private use. You know, it says it won't be developed, but technically, I mean, is putting a pool in, is that developing it per se? Because when I think of being developed, I'm thinking of putting homes or structures. Pool, you know, or a pavilion, or,
That could be a pavilion, you're right.
yeah, you know, I mean,
Well, if we're concerned that it's a loophole, we could maybe consider adding some statement in here that clearly states there shall be no buildings or structures built within the designated open space, unless,
Heather, I think I think Andy's point is open space is defined, was not to be developed. I
right.
think I think it's a valid observation.
What they said. It will
Yeah, I
not be
just, when I
developed.
see that
Yeah,
public or private, you know, public or private use, then that kind of throws the whole process of
Yeah.
open space
Yeah.
askew. You know, I mean, then I wonder, well, wait a minute, are we talking about a set aside? And it's to be maintained as open space or green space? Or is it a set aside that can be used at some point in time for some private or public? And when you start saying private, then I get concerned about people that have space or a lot that's abutting open space.
Right.
They have, technically it's private, they have private property. Does that, at what, do they get to encroach on that open space because it's private? You know what I'm saying? I get a little bit nervous about that.
So what if you took out the public and private?
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
Rich says. And just say it's set aside and will not be developed.
Right.
I think that would be better, actually.
Yeah, I get a little nervous about the public or private use part of that.
Good point.
Any
now
comments?
I
on
get
it?
what you're saying, yeah. Well, and, you know, and, our law department put that definition together for us, and they're not available this evening, but,
Right.
I think the intent was, you know, if the open space was owned by a public entity such as the township or Metro Parks, that they could open that up for public use, but it was, that use of that would have to still be, you know, passive recreation, maybe the walking trails that you might be able to put in there. And then the private side of it would be, you know, if it's HOA owned, you know, the residents that live in that and that are part of that HOA can also use that open space in a manner that conforms, you know, with the RCD, so basically passive recreation, you know, walking.
Yeah, but it's not gonna be developed.
Right, and will not be developed, right.
Yeah. So if the HOA decides to put a walking trail, that's not developing the open space.
I would say no based on this because you might permit that with prior approval, so they, and maybe we need to clarify that, maybe that prior approval was at the time of rezone, or how do you get that approved after the project's already done, I'm not sure.
And how do you separate that from something like a dirt bike trail? You know, there's always concern about dirt bikes in the common areas.
Or ATVs.
So, yeah, ATV. Snowmobile, maybe,
Really?
if there's enough land.
Well, I guess to me, what it all boils down to is what's the intent for the open space? Is the intent for the open space to remain in its natural state, to preserve whatever cultural or natural features that exist there prior to the development, or is it open to, because to me, when you start to put in walking trails, you're disturbing the open space, because you gotta clear out, you have to move trees, you have to cut down trees,
Right.
you're gonna have to put in gravel for the walkway. I mean, there's a certain level of development that goes on to put in a walking trail, you know?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I thought the intent was to leave it in its natural state.
Yeah, so to me, when you start, I think if there's provisions for those things, it should be brought up at the beginning of the proposal for the RCD.
Yeah.
To say, we're gonna put walking trails
Right.
in around here, you know. If they were in the fringes of the open space, I'm probably more inclined to be okay with that, but if they're talking about at a later point in time going in and cutting out a trail through open space for people to walk on, you know, then that becomes, to me, then you start to cross the line from open space into developing it into something other than. You know,
Would that then go to zoning appeals by the homeowners association? If they decided they wanted to do something like that, would that go to appeals?
Well, I think, you know, during this process that we've been going through for these last several months, you guys can make that decision. Do you want to allow these RCDs to have the low impact, you know, like the crushed limestone walking trails potentially through open space, you know, as approved at the time of rezone, and you know, and I don't, you know, perimeter versus in the middle of the open space, I think that's very, you know, it should be more site specific as far as what trees are in there and or what other resources are in there. You're staying away, you know, the streams, the wetlands. I mean, you don't want to necessarily go around the perimeter if those are where the resources are. But I think through this, we need to make that clear. And it's up to you guys, really. I mean, the way it's written now, it's not clear. Because one section says, you know, you can keep what's there. And then if you read our existing definition of open space, in section 5, it talks about how you can create walkways. So I think what we're proposing here is that the township should consider allowing, you know, some low impact walkways through the open space if it served a function, maybe connecting other open space areas, or as indicated previously, providing access to do some kind of scientific research or restoration activities where they might go in and restore a stream or a wetland. But I agree, definitely would want to know all of that up front at the time of
Well, I think,
rezoning.
like I
Somebody has
said,
to
I-
approve it, and it shouldn't be the zoning inspector.
Right. Well, that, and I think, yeah, that's not fair to put
Yeah.
the onus on you
Yeah.
for that, that's for sure. But I think also, I think it goes back to the intent of the open space. What's the intention of the open space? Is it for recreational? Or is it for preservation?
Conservation.
Well, and
Right.
reading the purpose,
I think it's for
Yeah.
conservation.
Right.
And preservation.
Because
And
you know, I mean,
Yes.
I become, and the only reason I'm more aware, I spend a lot of time walking in the metro parks. And I walk on trails and I see what goes on the trails. You know, and I see what happens, and it's not a lot of trash. You know, people throw water bottles, garbage. You have a big rainstorm, you get washouts, you put gravel in, and you know, and all of a sudden you've got washouts and ruts that get washed, and the gravel goes off into other areas, and it has to be replaced. You know, there's places where they put down, like, you know, they put down some sort of screening material. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a almost kind of like what you would put down in a landscape bed to stop the weeds from growing.
Fabric, yeah.
They put that down first, and then they put the gravel over top of it. Well, when the gravel washes out, guess what's exposed? The black mat that's underneath the gravel. So who's going to maintain that? Who goes back in and fix that when that happens? And then those kind of things, to me, now the metro parks, that's their job. That's what they do. They got guys out there with backhoes and front end loaders and dump trucks and, you know, 6-wheel ATVs with, you know, with shovels and stuff, and they fill all that stuff back in, they scrape it all back where it belongs. But I mean, when you're talking about in a community-based situation like that, who's going to maintain it? And then what happens when it falls into disrepair? Who takes care of it? Who's responsible for the upkeep of that? When it's just kept as open space, it eliminates a lot of those issues. Just eliminates a lot of the potential problems that go along with that. You know? Just bringing it down.
Well,
Food for thought.
if it's our call, I like Hiram's proposal, preservation and conservation.
And just reading the purpose statement, it really does focus on, avoiding development of natural resource area.
Right.
It really, all of 1619 really does focus on basically just preserving that open space
Yeah, I mean,
as it is.
well, it says,
But I mean, you could change that too.
such flexibility is intended to maximize the protection and conservation of natural resource areas and their functions. So I guess I would rather be a tad more restrictive on what goes on in open space, green space, than, I mean, if a developer, like for instance with Reed, with the Canterwood or, Canterwood Farms or whatever,
Right.
it was very clear, they're putting in a clubhouse, but they made sacrifices on lots, number of lots they could put in to be able to put that clubhouse in with the parking and the pool and things like that. It's not like they're going to encroach on open space. The walking trail, they're going to put a walking path or whatever from that one section of those disjointed lots that are on Hoos Road over to be able to get to the community center, things like that. But they made accommodations for that. They don't encroach, as far as I'm aware, or as far as I recall, we're not encroaching on the open space to accomplish those things.
Sure.
So the open space is the open space. And I think if we want to follow the purpose statement, that we're focusing on the protection and conservation of the natural resources and their function, I think we should kind of scratch out the public or private use kind of comments and any options or any opportunity for people to do things that may encroach on that open space.
Plus, a lot of times people don't want a walking trail going through their backyard where someone could be looking in their house and stuff too. I wouldn't personally want that from somebody having them walking by there, because you never know who they might be, whether they're in the development as your neighbor or if they're outsiders just coming through, casing the place out. So me, I don't particularly would care to have a walking trail somewhere close to my backyard or front yard, wherever it is, that gets close to my property.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Heather's pointed out in 1605, under open space, that whole section relates to the use of the common space, and that the HOA set aside fee and maintain it. So if they're maintaining something, it seems to me that preserving and conserving, but perhaps the developer's planned benefit of that open space to use, whether it's a walking trail or some nature hike or something, might be an attraction to the development. But 05 seems to set that up for just that purpose, while still preserving. I understand the concerns about who's going to maintain it, but I think that's what 05 addresses: the cost, the fee, and so forth. And it gives the trustees the authority, written notice, if things aren't being done. So I'm kind of torn a little bit by this. It's a good discussion.
Yeah, I just don't want to send mixed messages
Yeah.
as to what we're trying to accomplish, because I think we are a little bit conflicted.
Yes,
A little bit. Not
I would
terribly.
agree.
conflicted,
Not terribly,
We're a little bit conflicted.
I would agree.
And since we're tweaking things, do we take advantage and make it a little more definitive?
Can somebody clarify for me what the HOA would do to maintain an open space? My envision is, here's my house, here's my little plot of green lawn, and beyond that is open space is designated, and it's high grass. Let it grow wild. It's open space. We're preserving and conserving the natural environment, which is high grass.
Or forest.
Or trees, yeah, but what are you gonna do to maintain a tree?
For me, I fully appreciate that, but the 1605 does address this. So I'm wondering, the intent is establishing, the HOA establishing a fee mechanism to maintain it. So it appears the intent is to maintain some type of
Whatever it is.
amenity in the conservation area, future area, that is attractive to the people who live there, I would presume, the way it's written.
What other?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Ifelis.
Yes.
You know, this section 16 is a little confusing. 1605 is part one, which doesn't have to do with RCD specifically. So
Correct.
1605 is just with, if you do a planned unit development district.
No, I understood.
So those open space requirements don't apply to RCD.
You're telling me there's a different definition for open space? And we're
Right?
doing two different definitions?
Yeah, so section 6, I know this is really confusing. If you look
Okay.
on the first page, yeah, part 1 of section 16 has to do with like a PUD, which is minimum 100 acres, so you're looking at Summerwood and Quail Hollow. But we're doing, most of our amendments are in part 2, which is just the RCD section, and sometimes you flip up to part 1 as far as the review process, but all the standards and requirements are really in the second half of this section, so 1619 through 1632.
So
So as far as an RCD, the open space
definition.
requirements, the definition, and I can go grab zoning resolution, I'm sorry,
okay.
I didn't grab
That's
it.
right, the first
It's
is
in
zoning.
section 5, and it talks about conservation, but then it also talks about allowing, walking paths, which directly conflicts with how we're envisioning RCD and how we even enforce it.
Okay.
And what's in there currently. And I think with legal proposing a new definition specifically in this section would supersede the old, but I will definitely go back and get a clarification from legal on this, especially since there's some concern about what this might open us up to as far as public and private, and even the sentence after that, I'm a little concerned because it states that it can be used as community open space
yeah.
or preserved as green space. I don't know what community open space means. So I think I also would like to go back to legal and maybe button this up a little bit and get a clearer definition. But I guess I'd like to hear from you first is what it sounds like is the purpose and intent really is to just conserve it, preserve it, and maybe not allow
No trails.
additional trails.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
there's an attraction
Yeah.
to it, but I'm also
Yeah.
concerned that we have multiple definitions
Yes.
of open space.
Okay. Yeah.
It confuses the public, confuses developers.
Yeah.
Well, I think what it can also do, I think there's some potential to potentially mislead the public as to what's actually going to go in. And that's what, like I said, I think would be better to kind of tighten this down now. Before we get into a situation, where we didn't address it and then it becomes an issue. I think on the purpose statement, I think the purpose is pretty clear, and the additional verbiage and the protection and conservation, natural resource areas, I think that pretty much puts it out there as to what the intent is. And then I think we just need to make sure that we take away those comments or things that might leave it open to interpretation. So like that public or private use comment, I think we should strike that, would be a bad idea.
And like you said, Heather, I don't like that next sentence either. With the community open space.
Right.
or preserved as green space. Well, that's what it does. I mean, I think the second part, preserved as green space, is a little bit redundant. And I just don't like the community open space. So, if we have a community open space, we're gonna have swing sets and eventually swimming pools in that community open space.
Well, at least if not, you leave yourself open to that.
Well, yeah,
Right.
anything in between.
So do we want to strike that community open space verbiage? Is that your thought process, Hiram?
Yes, in fact, I'd like to scratch that whole sentence.
Open space may be used as community open space or preserved as green space?
Yes,
Maybe strike that sentence.
yeah, I'd like to strike that.
So if I'm following your, so I'm reading, open space is defined as a portion of a development site that is permanently set aside for public or private use. We're gonna get rid of that. We're just basically gonna say open space is defined as a portion of a development site that is permanently set aside and will not be developed.
That's right.
How's that?
Period.
Okay?
Right.
I like
So
it.
we get rid of the for public or private use, we strike that. So it's going to read, portion of development site that is permanently set aside and will not be developed. So get rid of the public or private use words. Okay, and then strike open space may be used as community open space or preserved as green space. Just strike that sentence. Is that right, Hiram?
Correct,
You with me?
correct.
Okay. Heather, you got that?
Yes.
And while we're talking here, this isn't red, but it's black. Isn't it kind of obvious that the next sentence, open space area shall be provided within the proposed RCD district development? Isn't that what we're talking about here?
I think that you have to state it somewhere. Yeah, you still have to state it, that it's required. This is the first time reading the zonings that it states that it's actually required to be part of the development.
Okay,
I think just because we've talked about this so much, you know, it seems like we've overstated it, but this is the first section where you actually bring it up as what is the open space and is it required, which leads you into the next section that talks about, okay, well, how much open space?
Yeah, I'd leave it.
So then if we fast forward to 16.18, which is now, was formerly B, but is now C for open space design criteria.
yeah,
Additional passive recreational opportunities are possible with prior approval that encourage the connection of natural and open space areas, provide scientific research for restoration activities. Are we okay with the passive recreational opportunities?
Well, isn't this what you brought forth, Andy? As long as they do it up front?
Right.
You know, if they're gonna come in as part of the initial site approval, and that's part of it, we could consider it, right?
Like, I'm okay with the existing trails or paths to be preserved.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, but then additional passive recreational opportunities are possible with prior approval,
We'd have to give the prior approval.
right? Good with that?
What's a passive recreational activity?
Yes, that's me. I'm asking that question too. What is passive recreation?
Question.
I
Not
would
sure I
get
found that one.
walking trails, hiking trails, that kind of stuff. It's not really a whole lot.
Isn't that active recreation though?
That's,
Active recreation. It's movement.
Bird watching.
Passive recreation.
What do you think?
Recreational activities that do not require prepared facilities like sports fields or pavilions.
And equipment.
Right, passive recreational activities place minimal stress on a site's resources. As a result, they can provide ecosystem service benefits and are highly compatible with natural resource protection. It came from EPA.gov website.
Maybe like bird watching.
And remember, this was suggested by Soil and Water, so they kind of are the experts in this kind of
Right.
field, so.
well, but then we have to define passive recreational activities in the definition area.
We could consider creating a definition of,
It says here bird watching, walking or photography,
yeah,
Okay,
ice, horseback riding.
okay.
picnicking.
I don't think, honestly, a developer's not gonna do this unless it really did help benefit the development of the community and there was a real, a need, that they saw a real true value to it. Because all this is gonna do is add cost to their project that they're not gonna wanna do unless it, kind of go back to what Rich, you were saying, like if it was a feature or a selling point for the development, that truly had a value that met the intent of this, language that we're proposing here. You want to be able to consider that.
To go to the sentence before that, any existing trails or paths can be preserved? Shouldn't we say should or shall or instead of can?
Or may.
Well, because it's an option, I think that if there's an existing trail or a path that's already there, it can be preserved, but it doesn't have to be.
You could let it go back to
Just
natural.
let it go back to, just let it.
Not what I would say, but that's okay by me.
Come on, Hiram, work with us.
No.
So what if there's
Well,
like
I
an
am.
old,
I'm-
what if there's an old ATV trail running through the open space? I mean, would you want the HOA to have to keep that up? Probably not. If you change it to a shall.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
Since we got this tonight for the
Yeah.
first time,
Yeah,
it might be something that maybe we should individually spend some time looking it over, putting our little questions and stuff in there for our next meeting. You can either
yeah, we can do that.
look up the stuff that, that was brought up tonight that you want to get clarified yourself, and then we can continue this on at our next meeting.
Okay, Heather, you want to continue?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah. So we'll just leave it in for now. Yeah, and we can rehash this out. So on the next page on 1619, one new thing that we added in, and I thought we really need to clarify to these developers whether or not they're allowed to put any kind of stormwater infrastructure in the open space or not, because even what I think is clear is not clear, even the way it's written today, developers in the past have put the basins in the open space account and it didn't count, and I really think this is the opportunity where we clarify that, you know. And I was suggesting, and I know legal initially had said that we didn't need to do this, but I still hear it, you know, and everyone interprets it differently, but I was suggesting that we actually just flat out state in here that the stormwater infrastructure may be located within these protected open space areas, but do not contribute to the minimum open space calculation, or to the minimum open space, and I might need to change the word, to the minimum open space calculation that's required in section 16.24B, which references you back to the minimum open space that we're stating is required.
Right.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that, or, I mean,
I
I don't know.
have one,
Yeah.
I guess, could be erroneous question here. If the infrastructure is located in open space, then it's not open space. It's stormwater infrastructure.
So what do? Set aside a lot for it then, or what do we call that? You know, do
I
they,
don't have a problem with the
Yeah.
state because I know,
yeah.
yeah.
So how, like,
Yeah.
from a subdivision, you know, a practical standpoint, you know, what is the surveyor and engineer gonna do to just put those features on a lot or a block of land, you know, how do, you know what I,
Yeah.
because they just design it and they put it in the open space.
Yeah, yeah. No, my
So how do
point,
we
Heather,
subtract that out, you know, like, I don't know, we don't wanna get into, you know, the basin's this big, and then at final engineering, it's this big, and then they, you know, lose density, or then they're below the 30 or the 40%,
Sure.
you know.
I was only gonna suggest stormwater infrastructure does not contribute to the minimum open space.
Oh,
It just doesn't.
okay,
I think that's what we're trying to say. Not where it's located.
I agree.
okay, maybe that's a clear way to state it. Okay.
Yep.
So stormwater infrastructure does not contribute to the open space,
Yeah.
and then they can figure out where they're gonna
Yeah.
stick it or subtract it out.
Good one.
Okay.
They can put it wherever they want.
Thank you. The other section, and this kind of came up, we talk about, right now in the zoning, it says that any area in the open space that's disturbed during construction has to be revegetated, you know, and then it states, a landscape plan's gotta be submitted, and I know we were initially going down the route of, you're gonna submit that plan to us at the time of preliminary or final or whatever that was going to be, but I was concerned that the developers might take advantage of that, you know, thinking, oh, they're gonna allow us to go and disturb this, you know, so we can grade out these lots, and then we'll just clear this section of the open space, and then we'll come back later on and we'll just, we'll revegetate, you know, so, I thought the changes here were going to make it more clear that it's to be preserved in its open space. But if there is going to be some small disturbance in that, it has to be previously approved
Okay.
and then restored immediately. You know, and submit like this restoration plan. I think that would all be kind of submitted during the final subdivision review process, when the final improvement plan will be submitted to the county and the township. So I did hear some comments at the last public hearing with our trustees and the Villas at Canterwood project, where a statement was made by their engineering firm that they thought they were going to just be able to go, that the open space wasn't necessarily gonna stay, you know, the way it was with the woods there, and that they were going to clear that in order to grade out the lots. Which to me, it was like reading this, it should be clear that you can't do that, but if someone else is taking that interpretation, I start to worry that, okay, maybe it's not clear. So this is kind of what I talked about with Dan and Soil and Water, and was suggesting that maybe you guys can set up, so you can think about it. It's new. We had also, and then the section after that, F, we talked about, you know, you could provide open space areas abutting the right of way. Soil and Water suggested that we also add in one of the benefits, not only breaking up the continuous row of homes, would also be in order to provide access to the open space by the residents.
Why would they need access if it's,
They could walk it.
But we're not putting trails back
You
there.
could still walk it without trails. I mean, you walk the woods.
That's why we have metro parks.
So no one in Summer Woods walks the woods. I mean, I know that's not an RCD, but does anyone over there walk in those woods?
Not that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that they don't.
Yeah, I don't. It's pretty thick. If you leave it in a natural state, it's pretty thick. I know ours is. It's not really walkable. So if you give them easy access, you don't know what they're gonna do back there. Camping.
Okay.
Anything else, Heather?
Just next page at the top, sorry, under E there, we talked about, this is the ownership and maintenance of the protected open space.
Right.
I added in a statement that states that it's strongly desired that the open space is protected with a conservation easement held by a conservation organization.
Right.
Right now, we don't make that a requirement, but maybe if we add that in, strongly desired, some developers doing that.
Okay.
Just next page on page 16.21, these perimeter building regulations, I know I had originally brought these up to you guys about maybe limiting how close a home to be built from the perimeter of an RCD. Well, just, Dan at Soil and Water was kind of questioning this, and I tried to explain to him what the thought kind of was, and he was thinking, and I'm just bringing that up to you, I mean, I left it in the way we discussed it, but when we talked about it, a lot of times the neighbors that live in the neighborhood around you, they're looking for that perimeter kind of open space to protect them from this newer development, because
Right.
typically a little bit more dense than their neighborhood. So the thought was, if you make setbacks a little bit larger, you might get open space there versus a home right next to an existing neighborhood. Soil and Water had suggested that you maybe focus, not so much on pushing the open space on the perimeter, but rather, really driving the open space to more of where the natural resources are, streams, the wetlands. But so by putting this in, it might force them to protect less worthy, I guess, land if those natural features aren't on the perimeter of the development. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so.
So I
something to
don't
think
agree,
about.
but it makes sense.
Okay, so that's just something to think about, was brought up to me, like, I don't know. I wasn't struggling as much as they were, but. So just, that was a little bit of feedback that I received from them on that, so. Okay. I think that was really it. One thing that we didn't really talk about, and Dave Radacci and Dan Donaldson brought up to me, is when the township originally adopted the RCD language, some of you are probably part of that board. They went back, the county went back on behalf of the township and reviewed previously approved subdivisions, traditional subdivisions in Lake County, specifically to try to figure out that density bonus, that existing one scale that we have in there, to determine, what these lot yield, like what the lot yields were on subdivisions. So I think they looked at, overall size of the project, how much area was in road right of way versus lots, and then figure out what the average lot yield was for the development, and that's how they came up with these density bonuses. And they told me that they'd be willing to take another look at that if we thought that might be helpful, to see what kind of yield would be a typical yield return on a traditional subdivision, and create maybe some guidance document, that you could use in the future. And I don't even know how we would do this. I'm not even sure, from a legal standpoint, that we could do this or not. I would check with legal, but they were talking about a guidance document that would show you, in a traditional R1, the lot yield was, I'm not even sure, like one unit per acre, or give you a range of like a low and a high on a traditional subdivision. So then if a project came in, we could look and see, is this subdivision kind of fall within that? I'm not sure if that's gonna be helpful or not to you guys. The other thing Soil and Water had suggested that really we should be asking the developers for a minimum of 40% open space on any of these projects. I know we came up with this scale that goes from 30 to 40. One thing I didn't think about is you might get a developer that comes in, rather than doing a 40-acre project, they might come in with 2 20-acre projects. And they protect 10% less open space by doing that. So doing a sliding scale based on the project area could potentially get less open space preserved if they were going to try to manipulate their projects to stay under a certain acreage, so they have to protect less area. So, and I know we went back and we looked at all the other ones that were previously done in the township, and I think they were all right at the 40%. Now with this Villas of Canterwood one, they were more like 35-ish%. So, and I know, and I didn't get to it yet, but we did get some comments from a resident that I brought up to Andy, and that we'll mention here in just a minute. And I think one of those things had to do with the minimum open space requirement as well. So we might want to think about that a little bit more. As far
She didn't
our
like the
scale.
sliding scale?
Huh?
She didn't like the sliding scale?
Oh, the resident?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So, and I hadn't really thought about the potential misuse maybe on that, from a development standpoint, whether or not someone would actually do that, but I guess it would be possible.
Now that's saying 20 here and 20 here right beside it?
They could be, or they could be completely separate from one another, I don't know. Or, I guess it would be right beside it.
It would have to be.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah, I would like to make a note that we did receive a letter or an email from a resident, Vanessa Pesic. She highlighted a number of issues that she wants us to consider. We just got this tonight, so I would like to have some time to go and review some of this and see if there's some, I think that there's, we haven't really had a chance to look at it yet, but I think we should take a look at it and see if there's any components of this that's worthy of including into our next work. I think in our next work session, we can maybe take a little deeper dive into some of the comments and that work. So, but everybody I want to make sure that it's reflected on the record. Everybody's been given a copy on the zoning commission. All zoning members have a copy of the comments and the suggestions, so we can all have a chance to read through it, and maybe we can have a discussion on some of these things at our next work session next month. And we continue this as we continue to kind of go down this path of restructuring this. So
Yeah, that would give maybe staff time to go through these as
Right.
well and see how that may fit in, or I think this might have been updated since these comments were generated.
right.
Because this latest version that we discussed tonight was finished up late last week, so.
Right.
I don't believe Vanessa has that copy, so.
Yes, we can certainly take that into consideration. And we appreciate all feedback from residents regardless of what the issue is. We like to see people take an active, an interactive approach to what we're doing. We welcome it. So, and we appreciate the efforts. Anything else on this, Heather, on this item number 3? Oh, outside dining. Do we want to talk about outside dining? Did we cover outside dining?
I didn't even bring that copy again for you. I know at the May meeting, we agreed, well, I know at the May meeting, the board agreed to striking out that section under 13 that talked about the
Right,
maximum 25%
Yeah.
capacity of
Yeah.
the indoor versus outdoor.
right.
Right.
I don't sense there's quite an urgency to pass that. Maybe we could just hold off on initiating that for when we're ready for this and do it as another
Right.
amendment, unless.
Just covering it because it's on our agenda.
Yeah, yes, I know, yeah. Unless you guys feel otherwise, we could,
Yep. Yeah, I think we made some good, progress on that the last time.
yeah, I think we're pretty much done. I didn't think that we had any other
Right.
changes that we were looking at.
Right. Yep. Okay. So is there any other discussion on the work session for the RCD?
None here.
Frank, any comments?
Not presently, no.
No? Hiram, you okay?
Yes.
All right. Rich?
I'm good.
Rich?
Other than to Heather's point referencing Lake County wanting to provide additional data, I think you've provided us enough. I mean, more metrics is always perhaps helpful in reviewing future developments, but you've given us some data and historical references for what here, and I think it's useful for me. I don't know that I need additional.
You want to take a look at yields from traditional developments versus RCDs or,
I don't know. I don't know. What we have here in front of us,
Yeah.
what you've provided already, kind of gives me a good reference point.
Okay. Anybody else on that?
Just,
It's something like
You know, the biggest thing that helped me was when we had the public hearing on the village what was that? Development last time.
Phil, is it Canterwood?
Yeah, thank you. I had a brainstorm there for a minute. Because he's laid it out, the two maps, of how it could be developed versus what he was requesting in conservation. And that really made a difference to me, just visually seeing that, without thinking of numbers and percentages and all that. It gave me an insight right away, you know, what the advantages and disadvantages was between the two. If we could have the developers do some, I know it's time consuming to them, but it sure helps us tremendously as a board to make a decision very quickly when you visually see something. The way it was laid out, because I even made a comment to you, I said, man, the way it's laid out, it would tell me I would just be better off to leave it R1. Just the way how the layout showed the properties and how close they were to one another and how much land was actually being open behind everything. I thought, I really scratched my head about that. Because that was a visual thing that I could actually see rather than just thinking about numbers, percentages in my head. That's my thoughts.
So does anyone else think that getting that information from the county at this point would be helpful?
no, I already, I'm sorry.
I know, I just
I already
asked.
said I don't think you need.
Yeah, I asked
I'm
if
sorry.
anyone else had any thoughts on it.
No.
All right. Okay, so we have still work to do. We've got some more tweaking and adjusting, and we'll digest some additional information that's been given, comments that were made tonight. So we'll continue this work session for the next regularly scheduled zoning commission meeting. At this point, we'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of the June 1st meeting. We had a light crew from that last meeting. We do have enough people in attendance tonight that we can go ahead and accept the minutes, so I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the June 1st, 2021 Zoning Commission meeting minutes as written.
Take a second.
I second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Abstain.
We have, so let the record reflect, we have 3 ayes and 2 abstentions for the minutes from the previous, from the June 1st meeting, so that the minutes will be accepted as presented. Okay.
That sure was a long meeting.
What, 11 o'clock? Come on.
Whoa.
It was a good meeting. Got a lot accomplished.
Yes, it was. It was a good meeting.
I agree.
Good input from the residents, good input, good conversation. I thought it was very, very well focused on the issues at hand. And I was pleased that, because we had a packed house.
We had a packed house, and I think
And I
it was
thought
a
that the
well-run
residents-
meeting.
Yeah, I thought the residents were very respectful of one
Yes.
another and
Yeah.
conducted themselves in a very professional manner. It was very nice. It was a good meeting, and I thought the end results were reflected the overall momentum of the meeting. So I think worked out pretty good. Correspondence report by the zoning commission members. Hiram,
None.
Frank,
None, Mr. Chairman.
Rich Ifelis,
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Rich Peterson.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I had nothing as well. It was kind of quiet after that last zoning meeting. Audience participation. We don't have an audience, so I guess there won't be any participation. And I will go on the record as stating in the last zoning commission public hearing that we had, it would be nice to get some public input outside of public hearings on what we're doing. And once again, I think this evening is a good representation of what we deal with as a zoning commission for this township, and working on things like defining texts and coming up with purpose statements and definitions and other comments. We did receive a lengthy input from Vanessa, and that's always well received and something we should incorporate into our next meeting. And but it would be nice to get some people to show up and take an active role in what we're doing here. Not only when we're confronted with a public hearing, when there's a change that's pending, and then all of a sudden we have a lot of residents become activists. But it would be nice to have more audience participation. I would like to see that. We specifically carved out a part of our agenda to accommodate audience participation, and typically we do these meetings in an empty room. So anyway, next zoning commission meeting will be August 3rd. Wow, we're already in August. This year has flown.
Big time.
August 3rd will be the next meeting. Anything exciting coming in front of us, Heather, that you're aware of, or are we?
Might be a couple new site plan reviews,
Oh, good.
so they still have to get some final things submitted, so that is, I believe we'll have a couple site plan reviews.
Any additional comments from the commission at this point?
None, Mr.
Do
Chairman.
we want to put all 5 at the table next meeting?
I kind of like that.
Space.
Kind of lonely on the fringes.
I think it would be good. I think it would be good for us. I mean, we're
Sure.
kind of beyond all the
Yeah,
stuff, so if everybody's okay with that,
definitely.
Yes.
we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. If everybody likes keeping this space, that's good. We can continue on, but we could all be at the table. That would be good too.
Okay.
So, all right.
Good point.
Yep. Anything else? With that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.